Hey, everybody. It's kind of bad news. So we got our first copyright strike. Actually, got a strike for this podcast, as a matter of fact. If you were lucky enough to see it when it came out a couple of weeks ago, good on you. What we're going to do now going forward is this will not have the B-roll from the movie over it. It will just be our discussions. There will be some jump cuts. We're probably going to do that going forward with at least what we currently have recorded for the movie podcast, while we figure out a new idea with it. We will be switching Fridays to GTAs only. We'll still be doing a couple of these as they come out, and I scratch my chin. Look at that. Professionally. Don't worry. We'll figure something out with these. Might be different platform, might be podcast only stream, but we'll figure it out, and we'll let you guys know as it happens. When it comes up. But for the next little bit, there will still be some movie podcasts just without B-roll, because of the copyright strike, and then we'll switch Fridays to just GTA. So stay awesome, enjoy this, and have a great one. Welcome, everyone, to the amazing What Would You Change movie podcast. We are the Super Monkey Fighters. I am Loki, here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers. This week, we are going through Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the 2004 film, directed by Michel Gondry, written by Charlie Kaufman and Michel Gondry, as well as Pierre Bismuth. It stars Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, Kirsten Dunst, Tom Wilkinson, with some appearances by Jane Addams and David Cross, who you will recognize both of them when you see them, most likely. You'll probably recognize David Cross. This is the story of a relationship that has turned sour, so the couple undergoes medical procedures to have each other erased from their memories. It's really more the story of Jim Carrey having his memory erased after Kate Winslet has him erased from her memory. So it's an interesting sci-fi, not sci-fi movie. It's an element I really like about it, is that the memory erasing thing is kind of a crazy sci-fi bit. But it's grounded in reality. It's just a bunch of people in New York, and then, oh, by the way, this is a thing that happens. Just go down to the memory clinic and
just go to the
have
clinic.
That taken care of. Yeah,
no problem.
So,
you need that memory erased? Go down to the clinic. They'll take care of it.
And it's a bit more specific than that too, because it's almost specifically people. That's what they kind of advertise as. Have this person and all of the bad memories of this person removed.
Well, there was the one lady in there with her dog stuff, so
I could see not wanting to remember the pain of a pet dying, or a terrible pet. If the pet just destroyed everything, you just wanted to. You come back. Who ate my couch? It was your dog. I don't have a dog.
Then you're just gonna come back even more confused with what's going on.
Well, especially if you wake up into a destroyed apartment, because that's usually where they do the procedure. So you wake up and you're like, "Who destroyed my apartment?"
I think it was your significant other. Did you chew on the couch? Who chewed on this couch?
And then it's a spiral. See, that's their return customer base, right? You forget the dog, starts a fight with your significant other, and then you have to forget the significant other.
Yep.
Genius marketing techniques.
Talking about the memory erasing part, I found that very fascinating to watch as memories were getting deleted. Because some of them would revert back in time, or he would be in one memory and he would snap into another memory. And it just, the way that it unfolded, I found was very fascinating. Because there was one memory that I recalled that he was in Barnes & Noble. But there's a guy that Clementine was seeing, and Joel, who's played by Jim Carrey, he can't see his face. And so he just knows that she's dating the guy, but then he's walking away from them, and the lights are clicking off behind him as the memory is getting deleted. And then he pops into another scene with his two friends. And so some things like that were simple, And then other ones were, I can't remember exactly how it went, but like time was going in reverse for some of the scenes because that was just how the memory was getting deleted. So it's a very fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah, I think that's the most memorable thing from this film is just that portrayal of memory and the special effects that come along with it, where it's a mix of, it's mostly practical effects with a few digital ones mixed in here and there, and just the utilization of those. I think that's what stands out, and that's why
it almost feels like a showcase.
In film and if you're interested in film and you're interested in storytelling and those kinds of things, I think this is a must see. Like, if you haven't already seen it, film school students should see this film because it's not shot pretty, and it lends to the story. Like, there are certain elements that are out of focus or that are blurry or that are overexposed or that are, and it's done intentionally. It's not just, hey, we're going to make a low budget film. This is how you remember things. Parts of it are foggy and fuzzy and they blend together, and
they're also being destroyed at the same time.
They're also being destroyed while it's going, and all of that lends to the story that they're trying to tell about these two being in love or not in love, or interpret how you will, depending on how the movie goes, because it opens up with kind of what seems like the meeting, where they're meeting for the first time, and it is the first time, but they're meeting after they've erased each other.
And that might be a little confusing to people who are wondering, like, because it goes from like that first meeting, and then it jumps to him in the car crying, and you wonder, like, okay, like, what happened?
I was confused.
But then you do as the movie unfolds and things happen, it starts to relatively become clear that it is the second time meeting of these two characters.
Well, and if it's because it sets things up without telling you what's going on, and then it explains everything, not through, here's a wall of text as to what the world is. It's just, hey, here's you figure it out as you go along.
Yeah.
And it fits kind of this disjointed, dreamlike memory erase thing.
The entire movie is chaotic in trying to follow.
Yeah.
And it's intentional.
As Joel starts to figure out what's going on and he doesn't want it to happen anymore, he starts trying to fight it.
Changes his mind.
That's where it gets more and more chaotic, and there's the scene where they're erasing the breakup, and he's following her in the car, and then he's walking down the street, and all of a sudden it's the other way, and he's got to turn around. He's got to continually turn around to go back. It captures that chaotic, dreamlike, oh no, I'm here, and then I'm there, and oh no, I need to go this way, and now this way, and things slowly starts to degrade. The signs are different. There's less stuff. There's less detail in everything as he's going along. So I think it does all of those things brilliantly. And I think having kind of the lower budget look, anytime there is a little bit of a mistake, I think it fits a little bit better too, because you're not in reality. It's so if there's a gaffe that doesn't quite make sense, you're like, oh well, it's a memory, it's a weird thing. It helps.
Yeah.
It just, you believe that world so much more, I think, because of all those things. So
we talk about the part where Joel tries to stop the deletion of his memories of Clementine. I actually liked those interactions with Clementine because they seemed more genuine in his recreation of his memory of her. And I felt that those scenes were a lot more fun because it wasn't just a deletion of memories and that's the story. It was more of him interacting with his memory and what he loved about Clementine. Mm-hmm. And it helped provide more context to the good memories of their relationship instead of the more sad, depressing ones that were deleted first. And so I think it helped break up the movie.
It's a really interesting thing within the acting in this, because this is one of Jim Carrey's I want to be a serious actor kind of modes. He steps away from just the goofy comedy and steps into honestly a really amazingly acted scene, I think, from everybody. I mean, and this really showcases the one I want to get to is Jim Carrey's amazing in this. The acting is all fantastic, but Kate Winslet's acting in this, because she does play two distinct characters who are the same person.
Yeah.
There's Clementine, the real Clementine, and then there's Joel's idea of her, and she plays those two parts very well. So every time you're in the memory and it's her and Joel interacting, she's playing his memories of her, and she's playing as much a part of him as he is, and that's where those dynamics there. And then every time you see her outside of that, the real her, it's a slightly different character, and she pulls that off amazingly well, and it's fits right, and it makes everything that's in the memories just land a lot more, where it's not, oh, here's just the same person doing the same thing. This is what Clementine would do in this situation of going back in time through memories and things like that. This is what Joel would think Clementine would do or want her to do, or how he expects her to be. So yeah. So she's a lot more aloof and just playful and doesn't care as much, but is also part of his, like, okay, what do you have to do? This is you telling yourself through this character.
So I would add, like, my favorite scene in this movie is when Jim Carrey is playing his younger self, and he's under the table. To me, that is the best part of his memories.
With all the forced perspective, and he's
really awkward.
He's 4 years old.
It's hilarious at the same time.
Well, and that's one of those where you know what's going on. You know it's a forced perspective. And it doesn't quite hit as well as a lot of forced perspectives do, but it fits for what this movie is.
It's weird and it's wonky, but it's like it works. It adds value to the scene. It doesn't detract from it.
Yeah. I like a lot of the younger scenes, especially when he's getting bullied, and then you have like the two adults, Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey, that they're all dressed up as younger children, and then it cuts to them as younger children with voiceover, like, okay, now I'm going to kill you, and then it just simple things like that made it kind of funny to me. The simple childlike thought.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes as well, when he goes back to finally confront his childhood bully, like, no, I'm an adult now, I'm going to take, and the kid just like twists his arm and throws him to the ground. It's like, because you're not fighting your bully, you're fighting the fear you have of him and the memory, so it's just like the symbolism in that, and also just so it wasn't Jim Carrey going back and kicking a 4-year-old in the face, like, it was, but it lent to the character, it lent to the story, it fit everything perfectly well, and it was hilarious too, because you're like, all right, he's gonna finally confront his his demon still has power over him. So, those are visuals that are memorable, and I think that's one of the bigger things that film should do. Is it should be, you might not remember the entire film, but you'll remember scenes that stand out, and you're like, yeah, that's one of those. Jim Carrey crying like a 4-year-old, and not like over the top rubber faced Jim Carrey, like he's genuinely acting the way a 4-year-old would act, like. And he's calling it out too. He's like, it's weird how much that's. I just want my mom to pick me up. It's weird how much that desire is there, right? Another thing that I love within those scenes is as he kind of becomes lucid and aware of what's going on and trying to change things, they start deleting memories. He goes back to them, and it's like he's in the memory of the memory, not the memory. And so things are slightly distorted. Faces don't show up. Those kinds of things where it's like, they do a lot of those things really, really well, where it's almost horror movie-esque, but not quite scary, just off-putting the way that dreams can be off-putting. And
like the back of the head, Elijah Wood.
The back of the head, Elijah Wood. Or the upside-down face, Elijah Wood. Or the no-face, Jim Carrey. Like, those kinds of things. And it just, like, the movie doesn't necessarily let up on those kinds of things. It just, that becomes the reality that you're living in the dream, or in the memory states. So as buildings start deconstructing, you just accept it, like, yep, this is it, as these things happen. So it's nice to see those kinds of that attention to detail and focus maintained throughout an entire film. And that stood out to me with this time watching through, is just how profound everything is, because he's in his own head, right? So everything has more importance to him. All of the events that he's erasing have a bigger importance to him because it's his world, it's his view of it all. And he's going through a profound journey where I think that's missing in a lot of movies now, is this big, profound, I've learned a lot about myself and about my relationship and about how I interact with the world.
And we learn about him through this memory journey, and it's helping kind of establish characters, their past, and because we kind of get thrown into it from the beginning, and we feel like we're starting the movie through their meeting, but we're really just starting at the end and then cutting back to the beginning. And
they are, in the beginning of the movie, they are a little heavy-handed in establishing archetypes for these characters. Joel is this kind of just depressed, lonely guy, and Clementine's the quirky girl because she's got crazy hair and she talks a lot. And it's just like, you're really just pushing this really heavy-handed on us. But by the end of the film, you understand those characters a lot more, and you empathize with them a lot.
This is something that I really did like, is the ending of the film, where you've seen these characters. Well, you've seen Joel. He's grown and he's understood a lot, and he's forgotten. And you have Clementine, who's forgotten, but they still are drawn to each other. And then when it's revealed, them talking about each other through this memory erasing program and the negative, and they're just going on about it. And they're both really awkward about it because they're like, but I don't think that way about you. And then they had the conversation in the hall, and they're like, but you will, and I'll resent you because that's just who I am. And even through all of that, they both decide to give it another shot because they have, I guess, foreknowledge or an understanding of who they are and what they're going to do to potentially change and enter into a better relationship for the future. Even through all the flaws, even through all the hate that you have for each other, you still choose each other when you could clean slate, walk away.
It's the flaw in the process, not in anything with the film, but they're erasing the memories of the events. They're not erasing the emotions with them.
Yeah.
And both of these characters made these off of kind of rash decisions, and so they both care about each other. And Clementine, who had it done first, you don't see her going through the process. You see her after the process. She knows something's wrong. Something's missing. Something's off.
Well, she's internally fighting it, right? With her relationship with, I don't even know his name.
And that manifests within that, because he's using all of the memories. He knows the memories, or at least the items that match those, right? So he's utilizing those to try and take advantage of her. And she knows it's wrong. She doesn't know why. But he's saying things to her, that Joel said to her in situations that she had with Joel, and it's just because she has the feeling, but not for the person. And she can't place it. And it's part of that acting where she really hammers that home within that, where you're just like, she's doing everything that her character would do in the real world, where something's wrong, we need to leave. And she's just like, all right, something's wrong, we need to go to this place because this place is where I was happy. I don't remember why I was happy there, but we need to go there because I was happy. And so they go to the Charles River that's frozen up. Which also reminds me, the Charles River, the poster, the DVD cover for this movie, the iconic image that most people probably think of is the two of them laying on the frozen ice with the deep set crack underneath them. I mean, that symbolism summarizes this entire story perfectly with just that one single image, right? Where the cracks are there, but that they're okay, kind of a thing. So
they have characters that have flaws. They clearly establish that they do, or at least they have behaviors that cause conflict within the relationship, which is what you want in characters, like
because it's realistic.
Yeah. Like if these were both perfect people that had no conflict, this would be the dumbest movie ever. I enjoy movies where it's like, people aren't perfect.
And it comes down to all, like, even the side characters. I mean, we've talked about Mark Ruffalo, or mentioned Mark Ruffalo, and Kirsten Dunst and Tom Wilkinson. And I guess Elijah Wood. They're the crew, they're the doctors, they're the support staff who are performing the procedures. And they have their own stories as well.
Yeah, it's like a side
kind of subplots, the B plots. That, they're just as believable and realistic. They're just as flawed. Overall good intentions, but they're dealing with the same kinds of things. And so Kirsten Dunst and Tom Wilkinson she's had the procedure done because they had an affair and they decided, and the way that he tells her... They decided. The way he tells her is that she wanted to forget. And then she goes and finds all of the evidence, all of the file, and listens to her tape. It's very clear that they decided that she was kind of coerced into it. So she releases all of the information to everybody, and that's how Joel and Clementine learn that they've already known each other and had this relationship. And so it's vital to the story, but it's not just kind of shoehorned in there. Yeah. Right? It fits. And the characters themselves are like, you could have not done anything within Jim Carrey's mind and probably had just as entertaining of a movie just watching them sit around his apartment. Because the characters have that much depth to them. We talk a lot about actors being able to embody a character and help us identify with the story and feel something. And they do that very well in this. And again, I've seen this movie a dozen times. This movie is much heavier 20 years after it's been released with 20 years of more of life on me. And what I realized was in the past when I watched it, I empathized with the characters. I felt their pain. I felt their struggle. I felt their strife. And that's usually the way it is with characters that I connect with or identify with. This time watching through, I kind of felt my pain through them. And I was just like, wow, you kind of get to the end and the house is falling apart and it's just this sad goodbye, that situation that you don't want to have happen, but it's going to happen no matter what you do. And it's like saying goodbye to someone, and just like effectively someone's dying, right? His memory of her, she's going to be gone. He's never going to remember her. And it's just that level of acceptance that I just, instead of empathizing and feeling somebody else's pain and being like, oh, that was nice. That was good. That was cathartic. I was genuinely sad, as if I had lost someone watching this movie, a movie I've seen a dozen times. And it was him standing there as the house is falling apart when he turns back around to come and say goodbye to her in his memory. And then she says, meet me at Montauk. That scene just hit me in the chest. He was like, okay, all right. That's what acting should do. Mm-hmm. That's what stories should do. And I was a little blindsided by it because I knew everything that was coming, right? I knew what was going to happen. I knew how it was going to go. I knew every scene that was going to come after it, but I was still able to
get punched in the feels.
Yeah. And it's more than just putting myself, like I said, I didn't feel his pain. I felt my pain through him. And it was an interesting experience.
Oh, yeah.
I've never really.
And I think it speaks to the film that it can connect even to you on different levels through different experience, time, and all of that. And I think that just speaks to how well the story is and how well it was portrayed and all the pieces leading up to it and thrown into the mix.
Dislikes.
I had a hard time getting into this one because of how jarring the plot was at the beginning. And I feel like they don't do a great job of kind of establishing what's going on or the timeline. They don't really reinforce it, and it kind of bounces around. And so, I mean, you do figure out kind of what's going on as you keep going. But I didn't really like that. Feeling like I'm like, what is happening? Because I almost thought, like the people that were coming to erase his memories, like I know we watched the whole part where he goes in, does the stuff to get the procedure started and all of that. But it almost seemed to me like they were like nefariously coming in to erase his brain. Like it wasn't part of what he signed up for, or like there was something else deviously happening. But kind of, because it's weird, but it's because I don't feel like they clearly established like what was going on or what was going to happen. Was it Howard? He basically just says like, you'll just wake up and you won't remember anymore. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But they're going to like basically kind of like break into his apartment and like kidnap him kind of.
It's weird because it's a thing that they know what's going on and he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so there's some situations where like when he's walking home and they wave to him in the van, like he knows what's going on with that moment, but it's like every day to them, right? They're doing their job and it's this big thing for him. And so it's almost like government conspiracy feel to
exactly.
it.
Like, so that was just weird in and of itself. This film is so chaotic in everything that it almost just felt like a montage of his memory chaos, which was the bulk of the movie, which felt a little long to me. Like I feel like they spent way too much time in his memories. Or the way, like it felt like there was too much. Like it's like at some point, feels like I got to a point where I'm like, all right, I get it, right? Like I get it. Like, can we let's move forward now? And so
there's a part of it where the journey becomes just traveling, right?
Yeah.
Like he's trying to hide in his memories, and they've got to call the doctor in, and he's but then they just keep doing it. And that part is just like, okay, we just need to move from here to here, and we've got 20 minutes to fill. Let's fill the 20 minutes or the 10 minutes, whatever it ends up being. Like, where he's just finding new memories that are.
It's like, we keep learning about him, right? But in the grand scheme of things, of the plot, it's like it's getting a little long-winded. Let's wrap this show up. So I didn't really enjoy that. I think it probably could have. There's some scenes that probably could have just been cut entirely. Or maybe restructured with some others that got the same point across. But for brevity, I think.
I do agree 100% that there's some things that could be trimmed out. So
one of the things that I didn't like was the whole Mary situation with Howard, where she undergoes the procedure, but then they stick her back into a situation with him.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm thinking, so you get someone sober, but then stick them in a bar and say, well, don't drink it, don't do anything. And I thought, that's incredibly stupid. Because, and granted, the movie wouldn't happen without it, but it's just one of those situations that she undergoes the procedure to forget about him, their affair together, and then instead of them, or I don't even know, because you don't know how she came to be in the job once her memory was lost, but instead of her going somewhere else.
How does she come back to the job after her memory was erased? And it's like,
did they just release memories of the relationship and not the job? How long were they the job before?
But he's part of the job. He's a person.
And that would have to be erased because they erase every connection to the person you're trying to erase.
I think those are technical details that they just don't explain.
Well, yeah. And fine, technical details, but it's still that concept that she went through all this trouble to erase him, but then they stick her back into a situation that she's going to be dealing with him. What?
Well, I don't think these are the smartest people.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that it's a silly thing to do, and it's part of the flawed characters within that. For me, it foreshadows and almost maybe steals a little bit of the thunder from the main point of the memories are gone, but the emotions are still there, right? It's just part of that storyline, and you're like, oh, you just told us what the ending was going to be without telling us what the ending is going to be, 10 minutes before you show us what the ending is, right? So, but it's that same kind of thing. It's like, yeah, she still has feelings for this guy.
Yeah.
She's eventually going to act on them without realizing why and cause all sorts of problems.
I just don't understand.
And he even still has feelings for her.
Yeah, I just don't understand how his wife would be okay with that. Because she knew about the affair, right? And the procedure, and she's gonna be like, okay, so she's gonna keep working with you, and they don't really go into the depth of their affair and their previous relationship, like where it came from and any of those details, but I can only imagine Howard's wife's thought on the matter. Well, because she showed up in the middle of the night, right? And she's to catch him. So she obviously has some strong feelings about the situation.
Right. Which is also part of that whole situation that I don't really like is Mark Ruffalo's involvement in that. Because at the end of the movie, he kind of makes amends with Kirsten Dunst. I think her name is Mary. Right. Yeah. Those two have been dating since the procedure. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I had no idea, blah, blah, blah. And he has this whole explanation, and he kind of feels like this good guy. But he obviously knew, because as it's all coming down, he's sitting outside watching it happen. Yeah. She watches the doctor's wife show up. He honks the horn to let everybody know.
Yeah.
But he's also sitting there watching his boss make out with his girlfriend. And his reaction is to, notify them, oh, sorry, something's coming up. What's going on with that? That's, yeah. But it's also part of that. These are deeply flawed characters who, he's obviously lying the entire time. He knows what's going on. He also likely Elijah Wooded the situation. He was probably part of the procedure and utilized his knowledge to gain some advantage.
Kind
of thing.
Possibly.
Trying to figure out how old everybody is in this movie is a struggle for me because they all seem about the same age, but not.
Well, and they all act like they're unprofessional, right? There's nothing about them.
Yeah.
They just show up and start having a party. It's
well, and that's what it makes Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, and Kirsten Dunst seem like they're early 20s, college kids.
Yep.
And Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey seem like they're maybe in their 30s, and then Tom Wilkinson's obviously 50s or older, kind of a thing, right? But it just seems weird. It seems more like they're just trying to make them fit into those groups that they don't actually fit into those groups. That I think that maybe that's what takes me out of it is just I know that these actors have all kind of been around at the same time and in the same movie, so they're all roughly the same age, even though Elijah Wood looks like he's 12 perpetually. So I don't know, that never sat right with me the entire time. Throughout the whole thing. It's just trying to figure out what age group everybody fits into.
Well, and I think that kind of leads that's part of mine where I feel like there's something nefarious going on because these don't seem like trustworthy people to be doing this procedure, and so it's something's wrong, something's off. This doesn't seem believable or right, and
like a back alley procedure that you would go to when you can't get it done professionally.
This isn't a high tech cutting edge facility, but they're doing high-tech, cutting-edge things, kind of.
To us, as the viewers.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's summarized really well in the scene where he's like, well, can I get brain damage from this? And the doctor's like, well, technically this is brain damage.
But it's no worse than a night of drinking or something like that.
Technically what we're doing is we are giving you brain damage, so...
So, Patrick, I think that his character, and because it's not done poorly, and that's the thing, because I could see in any situation, if this ever happened when in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, or whatever, if this ever became a real life procedure, I could see people manipulating it
Oh yeah,
for their own
right.
benefits. You have Patrick, who is basically seducing a woman on someone else's memories or information about her. And the whole nonchalant, oh yeah, I stole her underwear. And then Mark Ruffalo's like, you stole
That's
her
the thing.
underwear?
I say, yeah. Well, Patrick is nonchalant about it. Nobody else is nonchalant about
Yeah.
that. Everyone else is.
Yeah.
And Kirsten Dunst's character hates him right off the bat. Like, and he's like, I think she hates me. Yeah, she does, because you're a little creep.
Yeah.
And,
You're a little creep who's stalking this woman. And I didn't like Patrick at all. And I felt it tends to tie into my thoughts on the side characters, which is what Nugget kind of already brought up, which is the fact that they're unprofessional.
everything about him is just manipulation. And I mean, I agree. He's the part of the movie I don't like,
Yeah.
because I feel there's a lot of redundancy within some of the characters overall. And I agree with the change, because that's my change. That's why I didn't want to really go, because he's kind of my change too. Is that. And again, it's not because it's like, oh, this character or this actor, this portrayal doesn't fit this story. It does. I mean, he does a really good job. He's a creep, and he's a believable, realistic creep. And I think a lot of people could probably relate more with Mark Ruffalo in that situation, when he's being told about all these things, where you're like, no, dude, like, this is not right. Like, and he's standing up for it, but not standing up for
about it.
Like, he's not necessarily doing anything about it.
Well, that's Mark Ruffalo's character, though. He doesn't stand up to anyone.
Everything. You hear those kinds of stories, and you tell the people that, no, that's not cool, that's not right, you should stop. Or you tell them they're a creep, and then you kind of just back away from them, right? Like, nobody really wants to be friends with Patrick. They're all kind of forced to interact with him. Yeah. And as soon as they get an opportunity to not interact with him, they take it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as he tries to get himself out of work, they're like, sure, leave. We don't really want you around. And that fits these characters' careers, right? They're kind of the low-level technicians, right? They're the people they're the graveyard crew who's running the show late at night, and they're forced to interact. They're not choosing to interact. So it's pulled off very well. He's just a despicable character, and they use him as a device to push the main characters forward. So Joel starts hearing voices in his memories, and it's the people in his actual he's hearing the real conversations, and he starts hearing the conversation about Patrick falling in love with his girlfriend and stealing her panties and all those kinds of things. And it almost makes it feel like Joel is then trying to stop it all because of that injustice, and not as much because he wants to keep Clementine around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would change that to where he's not there, he's not that creep, because it forces the story to be about Joel wanting to keep Clementine around. And you can still have him like, oh, I heard voices and it pulled me out, and I that's the shock to realize that he's dreaming, or he's in a memory thing that's going on. But I think the motivation for the main characters, I think, are driven by him. So he's kind of integral to that, because everything Clementine does is because of him. Like, Clementine, something's wrong, and you're telling me these things about this other guy, and I don't know why. I would just rather have seen that done through their own devices and not through an external factor, right? Patrick is an external force coming in and saying, hey, something's wrong. And they're going, oh, crap, something's wrong. We need to do something about it. And it's less about their internal. Like, he's the external force that pushes their internal motivations. And I would like to have seen it just as internal motivation. So that's my struggle with it. like him just being a creep, I think works for the story, and it works for the character, and it helps push those men forward. I just would have made a different choice on it. So that's the way I would change the change I would add to the movie. And it does feel a little bit forced, like I'm trying to find something, but just as I was digesting the film last night, that really stood out to me. I was like, yeah, you could remove that character, and the couple of scenes where he's pivotal just change slightly to be different. Oh, he overhears the talking, and he's like, oh, right, I don't want to do this. And then you've already erased the things I don't like about Clementine, so now all I have are good memories, so I'm trying to keep her. And that's more what the story is, and less of this creepy dude's trying to steal your underwear.
So I'm going to be Superman, and
so I'm going to be White Knight, and yeah. It becomes less about him and their relationship, which is ultimately where it ends, right? He starts forgetting all of those kinds of things. He starts forgetting why he's trying to keep Clementine around. He just wants her around still, because he's just getting down to that root emotion. And that's, to me, what the story is. And initially those motivations get changed because of creepy Patrick.
I think the movie could still be told the same without Patrick in it. And as you mentioned, you just tweak some of the scenes and you just alter them to be still tie into the characters and what their motivations are. But I think that overall, if you just remove Patrick, you would get the same movie without a side story that just makes you feel icky about his character and everything related to it. Because even if you introduce just like a normal boyfriend into Clementine's life, maybe her emotions and her feelings, she just feels that this relationship isn't right. And so she's struggling with her deep-seated feelings for Joel, that she's like, I can't move on. And then it causes the turmoil and strife that she experiences with Patrick, just without Patrick. So no, I do agree with a lot of what Loki mentioned about changing Patrick out. But just overall, it's like you get the same movie without this character. It just is like, what does his character provide but to be a creep? And that's kind of where like it settles down on me, is what does he provide to the story as a whole?
So I think it just adds to the memories team, how they're just not like a professional organization group. Like you can take that and you go even deeper and be like if you want to start being like, is it right to be able to erase people's memory? Like, we're not talking about just like, because in the movie it is just go to the clinic, but like from a philosophical standpoint, it's like is this a good thing? Like, should people be doing this? And so by having creepy Patrick there, like, I think that casts the light onto it. It's like, yeah, this probably isn't a good idea. Like, through his character, it's like this whole memory erasing thing is a bad idea. My change would just be around trying to establish the timeline a little clearer, instead of just letting people kind of just figure it out as they watch. I didn't like the confusion with how in the beginning all the scenes were tied together. I would like that to be a little clearer. Like, and I get it. I mean, I get that they use that confusion to even hammer home the end harder. And if they were to spell it out a little more, it wouldn't, I think, land as hard. But yeah, I still think I would prefer to understand a little clearer what's going on at the beginning. Because, I mean, one of the things is, like, you don't really know how long their relationship lasted specifically. You know, it's been
a couple of years. Like, I think,
but yeah. like you don't know, like, going into the memory erasing thing, like, because you see the end, and then after he realizes that her memory was erased and he goes to the clinic, it's like you don't really know what you don't learn any of that until later. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just unsettling to me that you don't really, you're like, where is this going? What happened? Like, something's wrong. Like, you get that feeling that something ain't right here. Because they're not explaining things. They're just doing it.
Well, it puts your brain in a state of, I want to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the differentiating factor with knowing where it is. You're not going to try and figure out. You're just, hey, I'm on this ride, right? It's Space Mountain. I know that these are the twists and turns and everywhere I'm going to go. When you're not on there, it's a bit more jarring and confusing. And the first time you're there, you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. And there's more trying to figure it out. Where this time it's just like, hey, let's just enjoy the events as they unfold. So, well, that's our What Would You Change podcast about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Let us know in the comments down below what you think of creepy stalkers who utilize memory technology to take advantage of women. Specifically, we don't care about any of your other thoughts on the film. Just that specific aspect. Leave comments below. If you've seen this movie, tell us what you like. If you haven't seen this movie and you watched this before you saw the movie, I'm sorry. But go check it out. Leave your comments on your favorite Jim Carrey movie. We will catch you guys in the next one. Adios.
See ya.